Well, good morning. I should probably just address Christopher since you're the only one here in the webinar this morning, but that's okay because we're going to be recording for folks to watch later. And at the end, it'll provide more opportunities if you're still here to ask questions. So welcome. Thank you for taking your time with us this morning. I'm Chris Brady. I am the director of the Michigan Infrastructure Office's Technical Assistance Center. I'm going to cover in the webinar today briefly about what is the Michigan Infrastructure Office Technical Assistance Center. We call it the TAC. And then I'm going to spend most of the time explaining the application window we have open for technical assistance for grant writing. I'd like to suggest, though, if you do have any questions, you can throw them in the chat so we don't forget them, and we'll talk about them at the end if we have time. All right. A quick disclaimer at the beginning here. A lot of the federal notices of funding opportunity have not come out yet. And over the past several months, we have seen them coming out as relates to the funding appropriations through the BIL and the IRA. They have changed. So there's been several revisions, including revisions to the names of the programs, different language, different merit criteria, and a few different application requirements, such as they are not favoring references to things like climate change and sustainability or environmental justice or equity, and they are favoring emphasis on workforce development and things like that. There's been updates to application processes. Total funding amounts have been changing, as well as minimum and maximum award sizes and deadlines for the applications. So to be aware of them when they come out, because sometimes they come out with very little time to turn around an application. And so they've also changed some of the definitions that we've used, statutory definitions that we've seen, like the historically disadvantaged communities. They're now using the same statutory definition for areas of persistent poverty. There's been new language on applicant compliance with federal laws, regulations, executive orders, policies, guidelines, and requirements, including cooperating with and not impeding U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and other federal offices and components of the Department of Homeland Security in the enforcement of federal law. So it's important to be aware of some of those requirements that are being written into grant agreements. Sorry about that. Also, we are making sure you're clarifying as you're looking at these opportunities, all grant agreements or contracts must include terms that are in compliance with Section 3C4 of Executive Order Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. So just to be making sure we're aware of the changes as they come out and that you are as well. Okay, quick agenda, brief intro of the TAC, and then overview of the opportunity we have to apply for technical assistance. And then what are the grants that we're targeting in this window for technical assistance, and an introduction to the fact sheets that we have on our website, and hopefully an opportunity for question and answer. So the MIO TAC's mission and principles. The Michigan Infrastructure Office was created in 2022 through Public Act 166. MIO created a technical assistance program. The Technical Assistance Center was created to manage the technical assistance being provided to communities in support of efforts to access funding through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. In short, the TAC, sorry, my notes are too small, exists to help communities secure the maximum funding and successfully execute essential infrastructure projects by providing capacity building, technical assistance, project planning, and matching funds when needed. We hope to be a partner with you. We want to work closely with our communities to understand your priorities and achieve your goals for your infrastructure. We're working to provide a variety of support tailored to meet community needs. And we offer a range of services and continue to expand that almost daily um, to support key application challenges to maximize the likelihood that you have a successful competitive application. We need to always be ensuring state resources are applied for maximum benefit, so we'll identify and prioritize the most impactful opportunities that align with our state of Michigan priorities, including supporting equitable access for underserved and geographically diverse communities. And we will do all of this in the hopes that we're providing a model for how the state of Michigan can promote investment in infrastructure. And we'll do this by showcasing innovative ways for our government to encourage sustainable infrastructure investment while building local capacity. So, who is the TAC? Who are we? For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Brady. My background includes 30 years of nonprofit experience working with local municipalities, providing program planning, grant writing, technical assistance, program management, and so forth for programs like Community Development Block Grant, USDA Rural Development Programs, HUD, Home Investment Partnership Programs, MISHTA, which is the state agency, and Department of Home Health and Human Services programs. 2024 was the TAC's first year, and we supported over 70 applications for BIL and or IRA funding so far in 2024, and we've done almost double that so far in 2025. So we're doing a lot of work with a lot of different communities. You can definitely check our website out for our progress and outcomes map and see where we've been working. As the feds release new rounds of applications, we're going to keep opening new windows to apply for technical assistance to help you access those dollars. Michigan Infrastructure Office has a strong team with decades of experience in infrastructure and federal programs working to maximize these federal funds coming to Michigan. So we can all upgrade and modernize our infrastructure to ensure Michigan remains an incredible place to live. So also, we have a team of consultants that are working with us to provide the technical assistance. On the team working with TAC are these 4 consulting organizations. McKinsey & Company holds the umbrella contract, and Cambridge, WSP, and Jetco work underneath our contract with McKinsey. All of these consultants with as many years and millions and billions of dollars worth of experience, as you can see on the slide, are all under contract currently, so we can deploy them quickly and to serve you in these moments of quick turnaround for grant applications. So we're ready to go when you're ready. This slide does illustrate, though, the depth and the breadth of the experience that McKinsey and its contractors possesses. So this is our team. Now I'd like to go over the technical assistance offering in window 5. First, just a quick reminder that the window is open now and it will stay open until November 7th, 2025. Seems like a long ways away because it's November, but it's actually the end of next week, Friday. So to be aware, the window will stay open and then the opportunity will close at midnight on the 7th. Okay, currently we are providing 4 types of technical assistance. Yes, there are 4 types of technical assistance, but still there's only 2 applications to choose from within the online application system. We have its own separate application for communities seeking grant identification help. So the other application is to request grant writing assistance and or match funding for a federal grant. For applications that are selected for grant writing and or match reservations, we do a readiness analysis. And the readiness analysis is done. You don't have to request it. You actually can't request it, but we will do it if you request grant writing and match funding in order for us to kind of determine that your project is ready for grant writing and or match reservation, and it will be competitive. So more a little bit on that later. It's important to note here that all of these services are free TAC is excited to offer these services at no cost to the recipient community. All costs are paid directly by the Michigan Infrastructure Office, TAC, to the consultants. And because the state of Michigan has already gone through the procurement process for the consultants, and we have them under contract, the technical assistance, again, can be deployed very rapidly once a community is selected to receive it, which has been very advantageous, again, as we've seen these large NOFOs, and often not just large, but complicated, dropped with little time to respond. So if you are applying for grant writing in our match, please be prepared to spring into action. And we'll talk about having staff assigned to work with our consultants almost immediately once selected. So just to be aware of that. So what we provide, grant identification, and that is when an applicant community has a project, but they have no idea what funding, federal funding might be available for their project. They can bring us the project in an application for technical assistance, and if selected, we will help them figure out what federal funding might be appropriate for their project, and we'll offer them a tailored workshop and all of the resources that we find that might be appropriate for them to apply to at a future time. Then we also provide, again, the readiness analysis, and I explained that. When you get a readiness analysis, if you are selected from that as competitive and move on to grant writing, then you move on to grant writing and potentially a match reservation. If you're not selected for grant writing because we don't determine that the application and all of the project information is ready for grant writing, we will give the community a readiness memo, which will include an assessment of project readiness and compliance with the federal funding program that they have identified. So if not selected to move to grant writing, you get an explanation as to why. Grant writing, we will do narrative grant writing and also the grant writing application process coordination. So that'll includes narratives, benefit cost analysis, which is a technical piece that is often due on larger surface transportation projects and others that are large projects. And also the process management can include making sure all the due dates are met, requesting data, lots of different data often. So we ask that you're ready to respond with data that you have, and all kinds of things to put together the entire package. Then if you are requesting match for your project, you would be selected as a potential recipient, and we will give you to fill out what we call a match gap worksheet, which tells us the total cost of the project, the total required local match that the funding is requesting or requiring, and then how much of it that you already have dedicated to the project that is committed and what those funding sources are. And then that will illuminate the gap, the match that you need. Depending on the size of that, the match may be able to be, the balance of the match needed might be able to be completely committed, or we may only be able to do a portion of the match. We only have so much in our match commitment pot, so we will look at what your need is. If we can't meet the whole match, we will try to direct you to other potential sources for the balance, and we will negotiate what we can dedicate towards your project. Okay. So who can apply for technical assistance in this window? Around the ring are all the different folks that can apply for technical assistance. We primarily serve municipalities and their subsidiaries, school districts and tribes. We can also assist utility authorities and transit agencies. It's important to note that any eligible non-governmental organization applying must demonstrate support for their project from their local unit of government. We do this with the goal of promoting local coordination with relevant parties. So if you are not a government organization or entity and you want assistance and you're eligible for technical assistance, we're going to ask that you have the support of your LUG, local unit of government, through a letter of support so that we're aware that they are aware, and that can sometimes be critical if you haven't been able to identify enough match sources, and you need to approach them for match. So they need to be supporting your project. Municipal planning organizations and regional planning agencies are responsible for prioritizing and selecting the projects from their member communities to submit to the Technical Assistance Center for Technical Assistance Award. And that is for surface transportation and transit type projects. And so when you have that, we would ask that you also get a letter of support from your MPO or RPA. And that is submitted also with your application. Finally, you do need to demonstrate access rights and approvals of the local site ownership when applicable. So we need to know that you own the project and that you are coming in for support for it. Okay, to break a little bit of that down and maybe put it into some practical terms, these are some scenarios to help you decide which type of technical assistance to apply for. So let's say you have some preliminary ideas about infrastructure improvements that you want to make in your community, and that's as far as you are. I encourage you to contact the TAC, which is basically myself. We have some staff, but it would come through, any contacts usually come through me. Contact me to discuss future support opportunities. We've often been able, when folks are in the stage, we've often been able to put in or make connections to other state agencies that can help put some meat on the bones of project ideas and things like that. And so we're happy to direct communities when they're just in sort of that we have a problem we need to address, but don't know what we're going to do about it yet stage. Next scenario is that communities identified a specific infrastructure project that they're interested in finding federal funding for, but they need guidance about the correct federal funding opportunities to pursue. And if that is you, you would apply for the TAC grant identification support. Finally, you're a community that's identified an infrastructure project and you identified a federal grant that you want to apply for, but you need help writing the grant. And you may or may not need some of the matching funds to complete the application. So you would apply for the TAC grant writing or match funding support. Both of those are on one application. You can apply for grant writing alone, you can apply for match funding alone, or you can apply for both together. All right. It's important to note down there at the bottom that we will notify you when you are preliminarily selected for grant writing or match funding. Following that initial selection, we will assign a consultant to look at your project and do that readiness assessment to ensure that the project is sufficiently scoped, competitive, and ready for grant writing or matching funds. If you are determined you're not ready, the project doesn't have the data that is needed, it is not competitive for the funding source you've identified, things like that, then we will offer you, we will give you that readiness assessment to explain our decision, and then we may offer you alternative technical assistance options. Okay, you may be wondering, how will the application process work? So this is our 5th window in 2025. And again, the timing of the windows, well, let's put it this way. We're trying to make it coincide with federal grant notices of opportunity. We are in a difficult time right now. As everyone's aware, there's a federal government shutdown. So what we're doing right now is working hard to predict which of these funding sources will most likely be coming out. And there are a couple of them out currently on our list, but which will be coming out because there is significant money appropriated to them and they do meet some of the priorities of the current administration. So we believe they will be coming out with some of those new names and new guidelines around them, but that they will still be getting released once the federal government sort of calms down and opens the doors back up, right? So we're trying to get communities ready for that moment. We want Michigan communities to be thinking ahead and pulling together all the excellent data and information needed to put in the quality applications when the opportunities come. So we've done our best to predict which ones will be coming and when they might be due. So typically that is our goal, is to open windows coinciding with when we think federal applications will be due, to give communities enough time to work with the consultants and put the applications together. So then we announce that set of grants eligible for our technical assistance for in each window. Okay. Just a note that for grant identification support, applicants don't need to align with a grant announced in the window, but you should be able to specify a specific infrastructure project in your application with details around that. Okay, for grant application technical assistance and match funding, you'll need to identify the project and describe it in detail and the federal funding opportunity that you're seeking help applying for. Again, we're targeting grants that we believe that there's a couple that are currently open and that we believe will be opening soon. But also to note that it is possible to request help for a grant not targeted by the tech. So we released that list of grants that you read on our announcement. But you can also choose the other category when asked what grant you are asking for assistance with. If you do choose the other category, we need you to put in the name of the grant, the federal grant that you would be requesting help with. And that grant needs to be due around the same time as the grants that we're targeting. So, we're in the fall. That grant would need to be due end of January or the month of February. So sometime in there to give us some time, but if it's later than that, we'll be opening another window. So we would have you come in for support a little bit later in the year. That we do just so we can batch the work and handle the workload for the consultants. For each of our windows that we open, we're going to estimate the number of awards of assistance that we'll give for each category. For window 5, we anticipating awarding about 6 grant ID services and potentially 10 grant writing services or match reservations. This is an estimate only of how many we might be able to assist. But we'll review the applications that we receive and determine the amount of assistance needed. So some of the applications may be very light touch, and we can help more folks with those that don't take as much work. We can help more folks. Additionally, we have seen a couple times, not very often, where applications are very similar, projects are very similar, and we can sort of batch our assistance with projects. So either way, we will work to maximize and help as many applicants as possible with viable projects. All right. So this is just kind of a flow chart of how the application process works. This one is for the grant identification application. Again, that's its own application within the online portal. So we open the application window, which has happened on Monday. The eligible applicant seeking the grant identification help submits their application in the portal. We review and choose which applications to support and award technical assistance to. And then we notify everyone, those that have been awarded and those that have not. So you would get an email either way. And then we meet or communicate with the awarded recipients and confirm our services and what the consultants will be doing. Sometimes that's a meeting, and typically it is an email. So we don't have a meeting until the consultant will then schedule quite quickly a kickoff meeting with the recipient community, and they will identify and work with them on kind of detailing out their project and then identifying federal grants that align with your project goals. And these would be grants that in the future you would look towards writing. So not necessarily are any of these grants that are identified open or due right now immediately. Typically, they just get put on sort of a calendar for the community to look for in the fall or the next, in the spring, or but they are identified as potential viable funding sources. If in the future you decide to write for one of the grants and you also want grant writing support for one of those grants, then you would come back to the TAC in a future window and apply for grant writing support. So the award of grant identification is simply an award for grant identification. It is not a guarantee that you would get grant writing support. That would be a future window that you would apply for that. Additionally, grant identification is for one project. So we've had several communities, for whatever reason, thought they could continue, now that they were awarded grant identification, they could continue to bring projects forward, and we would continue to identify grants for them. But that's not how it works. It's one project is awarded grant identification and the service is delivered. If you have a second project, you apply on behalf of that project. You can apply for as many grant identification and grant writing services in one window as you want, or you can stagger them and apply as things are happening, one window after the next. There's no limit, but there is only one project awarded per application. Hopefully that's clear. If not, please ask me a question at the end. This is a flow chart for the grant writing and match funding support application process. Again, we opened the window, you apply through the portal, we review the applications and select the group of applicants to move on to the pre-selection stage. And again, this is when the readiness assessment takes place. We may or may not meet with you in order to prepare the readiness assessment. Typically, this one is, again, communication through email. We may ask for additional data if we need it. If you don't supply enough data or detail within your application to us to decide if that program is or project is ready, we may request additional data. But we do offer the opportunity, we strongly encourage you to use it, to upload any supporting documentation, studies, previous data, safety numbers, public input, anything that goes supports your project. You can upload that at the end of your request for technical assistance. Just scan it in there, simple stuff, and we can look at that to help us determine your readiness. But then we do that secondary review, and we either will award the grant writing assistance, or we will say, we don't think this project is ready to apply for this particular grant, and here are the reasons why, and you get that readiness memo. We may also offer coaching on the project and kind of give you ideas of what you might need to do to prepare. Oftentimes we have communities that just haven't done safety studies that they could be doing, or just different things that we might be able to offer to pull together in order to be prepared. And then we encourage you to write for grant writing assistance in the future. And additionally, we may also, and we have at times offered grant identification support, because sometimes communities come in for grant writing for a federal opportunity that is just not appropriate to their project. So they have a project that does look competitive, and yet it's not competitive for the grant they've identified. We may be able to identify another grant for you at that point, which we'll tell you about. And then in the future, when it becomes available, you can come in and request to be helped to write that. Okay, if you are selected, though, to go forward, we determine you're ready to write the grant. Then we award the technical assistance, and there is an immediate kickoff meeting with the consultant set up on the calendar, and we provide that support. And if you have requested match, we will also, at the same time that we're kicking off the grant writing, we will be sending you that match gap worksheet to start to do our analysis of what match is match is required, what match you already have committed, and then what is the gap, and then what portion of that gap can the MIO help you fill. And then if we can't fill the whole gap, what other sources are out there that could help you fill that gap? So that is a bit of a back and forth negotiation and discussions at times. So that takes us a little bit of time. So we start that right off the bat as well. So that is the process. Okay, next are some basic how-tos for completing an application in Window 1. We should note that communities will complete applications in the system for their own projects. Some exceptions may be in cases where RPAs or MPOs are the agreed upon applicants for the federal funds on behalf of the community project. But typically, RPAs and MPOs are not eligible applicants for the federal funding. It is the community. And so we ask the community to apply in all cases for the technical assistance. That is not to say that consultants are not wanted. They certainly are. And we encourage, if you have an RPA or an MPO or another consultant type entity that is helping with this process and they want to sit alongside through the technical assistance process, that's absolutely fine. We just need the communities to be the applicant because we were given the funding to assist communities, so communities need to be the applicants on record. Okay, before filling out our application, please read the entire guidance document. So for each window, we do a guidance document. It gives you all of this information written out and a little bit more. So we ask that you read the guidance document before applying. It's simple to read and a fast read, but there's some things in there that will answer some of your questions before you even knew you had them. So applications will be submitted through the WiseHive application portal. That's our online portal. The portal requires creating an applicant profile that can be used for multiple applications. So if this is your community's first application for technical assistance, you go in and create a new profile. And then let's say you're going for grant identification. We identify a grant for you, and then you want to come back and request grant writing assistance. You would go in through the same portal tied to the community and apply for the grant writing assistance in a new window. So you can have all of your applications for technical assistance linked and have a centralized place where your applications are seen, visible on a dashboard. So that's kind of nice because you can manage them, edit, and add applications from there. So some nice user-friendly aspects of this WiseHive system, although it's a funny name. I consider WiseHive is sort of like a place for very busy, smart bees that are working really hard. So that's how I remember it. Anyway, the WiseHive portal allows you to save your application draft at any time and return to it. So that's nice. You don't have to have everything ready to cut and paste into an application that you can only open and then save and submit. This, you save a draft at any time. You can go in and out of it at any time. Now, remember, it's important to remember that the grant ID and the grant writing match funding applications are on one application page. So you'll see that as you go in. When you're finished with the application, you will use the Mark Complete button at the end of filling out all of your information. And that might feel like you have submitted your application, but no, you have not. And this is important. We just recently had an applicant who, I think 2 weeks went by, and then they sent me an email saying, why haven't we heard from you? And I said, I didn't get an application. So we went in and looked, and they had forgotten or didn't realize they needed to hit that submit button. And that's important. So you mark it complete, and then a button will come up that says submit. Make sure to hit that submit button, and then the application is submitted. We get a notification email that a new application came in. When you've done that correctly, you'll see that green complete word when it's successful. Here's an important point. If you did submit your application and then went, I forgot to upload the project budget, I wanted them to be able to see that in order to determine that my project is competitive. So I want to put that project budget in there. You can go back in, pull your application open, even though it's been submitted, and upload something or change any of your answers. So up until the time when the window closes, you can change your application, even if you have submitted it. And that is a nice thing. I used to apply for grants all the time. And then there was always that rush to, oh no, email, I forgot this. And then sending in an email separately and always got lost. So this is a great feature, and I appreciate that we can have that available to you. All right, here is the general timeline we're going to strive to follow for Window 5. We estimate the application process should only take about 3 hours. So to be aware of that, this is not a complicated application. Is basically asking you for information about your project that you already have. We just want you to put it in the application so we understand your project. Window 5 opened. The webinar is right now. We're going to have office hours on the 3rd of November. So if you are in the middle of your application and you have questions, feel free to come to office hours. And you can also email me as well, but office hours are a nice opportunity for peers to hear each other's questions or concerns and learn from them. So I encourage attending office hours on November 3rd at 9 a.m. We're going to close that window at midnight on the 7th, and by mid to late November, we should have the preliminary notices of award out, and we will commence technical assistance. So again, I encourage you to reach out if you have questions. All right, here's our scoring criteria. And again, this is for grant identification. These scoring criteria are what our grant readers, we have teams of grant readers they will be using to score the applications for technical assistance. Often, most of the time, we have state agency experts. So depending on the type of infrastructure project, so if you have a roads project and you're looking for help with a roads grant, we'll typically have someone from MDOT read your grant. As well as TAC folks, likewise water, environment, etc. So this is what they use for the evaluation criteria. Project quality, is there a clear and compelling vision for the project? Is it innovative and collaborative? Is the need for the project clear? And does it meet the state priorities? And those state priorities are in the application. There's a drop-down list, and you get to select the state priorities that you believe your project supports. And so I suggest you select and defend as many of those as you can. Some folks just kind of pick one. They think, oh, I'll just pick one. Well, that's okay, except we want your projects to pick or to meet as many state priorities as possible. So if you can select more than one or as many as you can and provide a defense for why you think your project meets particular priority, that is even better. Grant writing and match funding support evaluation criteria. Again, project quality is the same as grant identification. Does the project then itself align with the federal grant opportunity that you're asking for help with? And we will assess the fit and competitiveness and whether it meets the goals that the feds have set out in the NOFO. Does it meet state priorities? So same as grant ID, does it meet the state priorities? And how many and to what degree? And then can you demonstrate need for our help? So if you're asking for grant writing assistance, we want to know why you need that. What are your capacity issues and things like that? Do you have other assistants? Do you have anyone that's ever done this before? Has no one on staff ever done this before? So those kinds of things are important for us to know. And then again, project readiness. How much of the pre-development work has gone on already, etc. But again, you don't have to have done it all. We know that we're here to help you with those kinds of things. But to be able to articulate what you have done can be helpful for us in determining award. And then we also award bonus points for rural communities and disadvantaged communities making an application because and also geographic spread across the state of Michigan. So at this point, I believe we've assisted communities in every prosperity region of Michigan. So geographic spread has been achieved, and it is not as weighted as heavily as it has been in the past. But that's what we mean by geographic spread. We want to invest technical assistance resources across the entire state. All right, these are the Window 5 grants, and I'm not going to go into this chart in detail other than to say they're varied. We have Swiffer, which is for solid waste. We have something for fish passage. We have some environmental SIFIA stuff. We've got transportation and transit for tribes. We've got the build for large surface transportation, roads and bridge projects, and we've got GRISI for rail projects. So these are some of the major projects that the MIO and the IRA funded that have funding available that we believe is going to come out again. So we have faith, and we hope that you do as well, and are willing to give it a shot. Okay, this is what we call a fact sheet, and they are located for all of these grants. There is a fact sheet on our website, and this is a great precursor to reading an entire NOFO. So if you want to read our fact sheets about, I'll show you one here, about the funding source that you're looking at, and kind of check that you're looking in the right direction, we encourage that. We also say that our fact sheets are no replacement for reading the entire NOFO. So it's really important to make sure that if you are really serious about applying for one of these funds, we expect that you've read the entire NOFO and feel confident that your project is a good fit. Okay, important to note about the carbon dioxide transportation infrastructure finance and innovation future growth grants called SIFIA FGG in the alphabet soup. Important to note on that is an immediate deadline coming up on November 11th, where potential applicants must have submitted a letter of interest. So because the window will probably not have awarded TA by then, we would expect that any community going for the SIFIA grant will create that letter of interest and submit it on their own. Excuse me. If you have any general questions about how to do that, because you are doing it, please send me an email and I will try to get you some assistance with it. But we are not really formally awarding TA to put together letters of interest, but they are due for this grant. So if you going to ask for grant writing support, we're going to ask for a copy of your letter of interest that was submitted. So total funds available, $500 million under SIFIA, big grant opportunity. Big goals for this grant. Our typical fact sheet tells you how many dollars are available if we know it. It tells you the objectives of the program, which for SIFIA is to develop and construct large commercial scale carbon dioxide transportation infrastructure. This is all very scientific and not something I completely understand, but we have expert consultants that have digested this material and put it in bullet points for you. And they have bulleted for each actual application the goals and merit criteria that the feds have stated for the program. So that's important to feel like when you read through these, that your project can help meet most, if not all, of the federal goals and the merits for the program. So we also go over what is the match funding requirement for the SIFIA or any of the grants, which is up in the right-hand corner. So for SIFIA, it's 20% local dollars need to be brought to the project and identified at time of applying. For the federal, 80%. And then we talk about the uses that they've stated that are eligible for the grant. You can see them there. And then how much has the grant yielded in awards, and what do we expect the maximum and minimum awards are, as well as little details like how performance period, and then past awards, which for SIFIA, none have been allocated. This was on the verge of coming out, and then we had a change in administration. Everything was sort of slowed down, and now we're hopefully ready to roll again. But they do anticipate 5 awards. These are big projects, and should be multiple partners in these projects. So application requirements, high level, who's eligible to apply, and then what are the key grant application components are covered in our fact sheet. So what are you going to have to pull together to put in and submit with your application? That's all listed there in bullets. Obviously, the details are in the NOFO. Again, I'll go over this one just because it's a little bit different in that SWIFR has come out and been awarded in the past. SWIFR is for solid waste recycling, and tribes and intertribal consortia are eligible for this one. Excuse me. There's $20 million available. Here's the goals and merits and what it is intended to support. Here's the details. And then we can see down here at the bottom that there have been awarded projects. So we can give you that kind of information. We give you the high level requirements and who's eligible, and also the key components, again, that have to go in with the application. And then typically, if someone has been provided these funds in Michigan, we give you examples of who's won in Michigan. So in the past, Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe and Mach-E-Benashewish Band of Potawatomi Indians also won. We give you a little bit of a description of their project. So if you are a tribe that's going to be going for these funds, you may want to reach out to your fellow tribes and see if they will talk to you about what they felt was the successful aspects of their application and what are they doing with their project. Okay, so I'm not going to go over the build, but just to be aware, this is a very large project, or I'm sorry, a very large opportunity that's open for large infrastructure projects for roads and bridges. There is $1.5 billion that was left on the table last year, so that should be available this year. We're anticipating this to be released at the end of November or sometime in November. Can't be sure if all of that $1.5 billion will be in the NOFO, but we know that that was the amount that was not allocated from the project, so the federally appropriated funds so far. Again, we're putting the disclaimer on the ones that haven't come out yet to talk about the fact that these NOFOs aren't released in their new format yet, and they could change, and it's important to read them through. And these are build recipients in Michigan in the past. All right. That's the entire presentation, and this is my thank you slide with that QR code, which is to our website, and my email address to reach out to if you have questions later. And this is when I thank you for your time and attendance today. And again, we have office hours coming up in November, and you are welcome to attend that. And since we have a little bit of time, I think we can look at the chat and answer some questions. So let's see. I think we've put something in here. Let me see what we got. Templates are examples of letters of support. We don't really have templates, but typically the RPOs and MPAs, they write them all the time. They won't have any problem. And so do municipalities. So although if you run up against an occurrence where they don't know what you're talking about, or they don't have just need you to feed them a template, we could probably send you a sample. Wouldn't have any problem with that. But typically they're kind of in the words of the supporting entity, and they kind of have their own templates that they are comfortable putting out. So I would say that's a yes and a no. Happy to help if they absolutely don't know what to do, but I'm not very rarely seen where someone doesn't know what to say. And typically municipalities and MPOs and RPAs, again, they have their own language that they like to use, and they've done it many times. Right. Okay, well, there's no other questions. You're welcome. If there's no other questions, we will end for today, and I appreciate your attendance, and we look forward to reading your application for technical assistance. Have a great day.